Hello, everyone watching. Thank you and welcome for our session on future-proof and technology. What we intend to do in this session is explore what technical solutions businesses would consider for future-proofing the digital strategy and what they need to prioritize, cost, resources, everything like that. And then how do we factor in cloud and everything like that that goes into support it to actually make the best fit solution for a business. What are the impacts on security, privacy, end user devices, and how do we keep regulatory and legal compliance in check? So my name's John Walworth. I'm the Information Security Lead at Virgin Care. With me, we have Debbie Evans, who is the Group Data Protection Officer at Rentokil. And we have John Cosson with us as well, who is the Head of IT and CISO at JM Fin. Debbie, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi there, thanks very much, John, and hi there, John. It's easy not to forget names when we've both got the same one. So I'm the Global Group Data Protection Officer for a company called Rentokil Initial, which is, I think, in the top FTSE 40 now. So my remit is looking after all the businesses that they have globally, and they're in about 84 or 85 now, I've lost count, different countries that we operate in. And I'm basically responsible for ensuring that we've got a network of local privacy officers who comply with data protection requirements throughout their business.
Thank you very much. And John?
Good morning, everyone, and good morning, John, with an H, and Debbie. I'm John Cosson. I'm Head of IT and CISO at JM Fin. We are a wealth manager based in the UK with approximately 10.5 billion under funds private client assets. My job as head of IT, I've been at this particular role for 21 years, which is probably a strange thing to be at a company. I've been in IT about 34 years. I've worked some large blue chips in the past, but my focus is technology. My focus is running a very talented team of professionals that service the business. And that's one hat, and my other hat is as a CISO as well. My background is very cybersecurity based. Again, I've a recognized speaker around the world on various subjects relating to cybersecurity, and I'm currently working through a PhD in the cybersecurity field.
Brilliant, thank you. So on the topic of what can businesses do to future-proof the technology? The one challenge that I feel that we all face in the security world is actually understanding the business's overarching strategy. That's our first challenge that we see, is we develop solutions that will support them. And a lot of people see security in particular, and quite a lot of times privacy I see as well, as the team of no with an N-O, rather than the team of no, which is KNOW. And that's what we all strive to be, but we know that sometimes people see us as blockers and will try to work around us. So how do we feel that the IT and the security and privacy strategies can fit into support a business strategy, or do you feel that they are there as a challenge to sort of hold people against a standard?
So if I may take that one first, John. I think we can add a huge amount of value to businesses now, because we hopefully should be more insightful about how the world is progressing and evolving when it comes to the compliance space. And I've seen, many companies currently not think about the future when they purchase systems or applications or whatever they do. And my suggestion to them is to think, well, this is only going to be fit for purpose for maybe a year. The legislation is changing at a fast pace. Have you considered looking at things that actually, might seem more costly at the beginning, but actually will end up saving you money and potentially making you more money because the way they operate is smarter, more efficient, and obviously compliant, so reduces the risk of any potential fines, etc.
I'll come into that as well, Debbie, because I think regulation is incredibly important, especially in the financial sector that I work. Every solution we have, and I'm going to use the last 12 months as an example. The pandemic has meant that there's a whole change to the way businesses function. And we've had to continue to develop technology within this very challenging times, but we've had to align that to not only the strategy of the business or attempt to do that, but also to the regulators as well and regulation. Because you're working from home, or 99% of your staff are working from home, you can't just ignore regulation. So it's been actually quite a challenging time for many IT departments. But wearing both hats as a technologist to deliver technology to ensure that the business can survive, but then also securing it has been an incredible challenge for many organizations. And I think this is where I think businesses now are really seeing the value of this flexible workforce, what's worked in the last 12 months, but also how do we secure it? What are the challenges and what do our clients expect? And and as we start to come back to work in the offices, etc., what does that mean for the business and what does that mean for our strategy, and how do we align to that new business strategy?
The one thing I've seen in healthcare is our frontline staff are obviously still on premise, and there's no change there. But our back office staff are 100% remote now, and we've seen that mobility is massively beneficial. We can actually collaborate faster and easier. Not being in an office because our offices are so spread out over the UK, we can actually save time, effort, and increase productivity by having unified communications tools. But when we work from home, what we've also seen is we've actually dispersed a little bit of our risk around networks as well, because we've got effectively the same spread going out to cloud-based solutions rather than all going through our internet pipe, because we use local presentation for internet connectivity. We only VPN when we come into our secure data. Do we feel that that's something that we can see continuing as the drive to the cloud, but then also this embrace of a sort of flexible working model from home and office today using corporate devices, but then in the future, who knows?
Shall I take that, Debbie?
Yeah, go on. You carry on.
Sorry. Yes, I think businesses will change. It's not. We've got to look at what's worked in the last 12 months. Interestingly, with cloud, we use cloud, but we use a private cloud because that works for us. We can deliver everything that cloud can pretty much deliver, but in what we would class in a secure way. We will keep our crown jewels close to us as possible. Certainly makes our data protection officer happy anyway. But this is we're looking at within our own business of a hybrid model that services users that will inevitably come back to the office. But I think it's going to be flexible. So we're going to have people working from home. We're going to have people working on the go. We're going to have people working in the office. But I think they've all got to connect together. And I think communications is going to be critical to this. Whilst everybody's appreciative of technology and that we're all working in a new way, once we start to come back to the offices, we've got to look at how we're going to integrate home working, office working into this new model. And then we've got to secure it. I think people have been very forgiving at the moment because obviously these are very unusual times. But what does the future look, and how do we therefore secure that and deliver solutions in this new normal? Sorry, Debbie, I did cut across you there.
No, and to be fair, I think certainly our company is adopting a hybrid model. But to be fair, we did have quite a flexible approach anyway. So we were already set up for home working, and some companies would have been. So it's not really, it hasn't impacted us massively. I think the challenge comes, though, when people want to start printing things at home or getting access to papers at home. And so then if you're in a shared household, for example, things could be seen by maybe people you don't want it to be seen by, so it's those extra, I suppose, security controls that people probably need to think about when they're home-based. And, it's not something you would necessarily think about in the office because you're usually in a secure, sometimes you're in a, an enclosed office. So that's something I know, the communication point you mentioned, John, is pretty fundamental, is people need to start being more aware of what they have around them, not just in the office, but at the home office, because people will come in and potentially see stuff they shouldn't.
I think we need to look at and this has been the focus for us. We've run some security tests, and we've done, we've created videos, and we've focused on awareness for home users. We've been running video cybersecurity seminars for about 10 years that I usually deliver within the firm in person. This year it's been over a video, much like this, but also to get to those individuals to start looking around them at their environment, looking at things like their router, what's connected to that router. Like never before, we haven't, in our organization, we had 6 offices last March. By April, we had 350 offices. And that's what we had to get round in our head. And we had to look at how we secure the weakest of those offices. And I think you're absolutely right. Printing is a real issue, so we didn't allow it. And it's strange, taking that away from people. They've adapted new ways of not needing to print. So what we're trying to do when they come back to the office is reduce the number of printers and hopefully save the environment at the same time. But I take your point there. It's really important, that. But we'll see. Let's see if I'm successful when we start coming back.
The education and awareness key was quite an interesting one there around your use of video. John, do you feel that you've had actually better engagement because people are actually less distracted because they're sat there at home and they can just log straight into your video, or have you found actually engaging with your people a little bit more challenging in this new way?
Yeah, I do. Oh, sorry, Debbie. Sorry, you go first.
No, I was going to say, I think one of the challenges with virtual learnings is it's not necessarily as effective as face-to-face sessions. I mean, I think these things are fantastic, but there is a risk that people will switch off. So, hopefully the audience today are completely engrossed, but, it is hard to get messages across when people have got a lot on their plates and they can't actually take themselves away properly to be trained. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. It was weird looking into a camera, delivering a training session that was recorded and then taking some Q&As afterwards. I think the benefits of recording is that people can watch it at leisure, so they're not always bundled in. But what we try to do with Cybersecurity Seminar is an awareness, is engage people. So you would choose people at random and then their phone would ring and it would be from someone they know and it wouldn't be from them, to try to get just an example that anybody could call them from any number and to rogue text messages and that sort of stuff. You can't do that in a video. And to give real life scenarios that are in a room, you make it entertaining because you're trying to get across a really important point. And that's actually quite hard to do over a video. It really is. But what we managed to do on the videos is to make people look at a typical house, look at their router. How old is the router? Has anybody ever looked at who's connected to the router? When was the last time the password was changed? Do you know who's actually on your network? These sort of things that now resonate with people because it's so important. Because that router, realistically, in someone's house that's probably 5 years old, maybe 8 years old, that cost a few pounds to produce, is a part of our network now because it's integral. So we've got to make people aware of this, and it's everybody's responsibility, not just the CISO, not just senior management, but even down to the post room, the receptionist, right up to the CEO. Everybody's responsibility, and they need to take some sort of ownership with this. So that's what we've tried to do.
And that, again, is another interesting point, because the more that we have the home working situation, and we know that the future likely looks hybrid, there is an argument that installed home equipment, where is that boundary? Where does the responsibility and the accountability start and end between employer and employee? That starts to get really, really challenging. Now, we ourselves only allow our devices to connect to our network, to our data. That works on our VPN, but for our cloud services, we then have to use our Azure AD connections to then authenticate and use conditional access for. So we can kind of control that. But again, for business continuity, we do have virtual desktops that we can spin up and everything like that. So we can minimize the risk there. But do you feel that you can see an ownership challenge coming down the line? And do you think that companies should be thinking about how they can sort of invest in an employee's home office setup? Debbie, we'll go to you first on that one.
So I would say some companies are being quite proactive in this space, because obviously they recognise the value of getting the setup aligned with their own security program. I think it will depend on the maturity and the size and the budgets. But if they recognise that that's a good longer term investment to provide employees not only with the right security access, but the right monitors, the right chairs, etc. It's all about making sure that they are suitably provided for. And ultimately, happy employee, happy outputs. It's all win-win or whatever. So I think that is what more proactive companies should be looking to do, because I think this model is going to be here in the long term for most companies.
And John, have you found that?
It's interesting. I completely agree with Debbie. We are actually relocating our HQ in a couple of months. We're slightly downsizing because we are actually adopting. We have the luxury actually of adopting some model of flexible working, and we think that's going to certainly work for us and our clients, because at the end of the day, that's what's important to us. Now, what does that mean for us as in some sort of a hybrid model? Well, that means you've gone from, in our case, 350 positions to almost 700, because you're going to have a position at home and a position at work. We've now got to look at some sort of protective, almost like an umbrella around that, to make sure that we've got best practice, not only at work, but in people's homes. And that's a real challenge for many organizations. Now, you can put various levels of security, encryption. You can literally put layers and layers in place, and you can use AI, you can use all these new techniques, but ultimately, at the end of the day, you've got a human that needs to operate this in an environment that's not a work environment. So you've got to think slightly out of the box here and say, right, okay, how do we protect that person? And realistically, it's about awareness and education. And that is so important. You can give someone the tools. You can put as many locks on a door. You can put the most expensive locks on a door. You can put numerous locks. You can make it bulletproof. You can put an alarm system. You can put dogs there. But if someone inside is going to open the door and let someone in, that's all really irrelevant. So it's about education and awareness and ownership. This is really key for us. You want this flexible working environment, which is great, and we know it works. You're going to have to, it's give and take here. You're going to have to meet us halfway, and you're going to have to take some responsibility. Because I think that's going to be the case in banks and everywhere.
Yeah, so I think the ownership and accountability is a major issue that, people need to take more responsibility for this sort of, I suppose, benefit, really. Yeah.
So I think it's benefit to the business. I think it's benefit for them as well.
Yeah, it's benefit for everybody ultimately, right? So I think some of us have definitely enjoyed having more flexibility, and if we are going to, continue that way, we need to recognise there are risks, and we need to be able to demonstrate as individuals that we can manage those. Company obviously needs to provide guidance, absolutely, and training, but individuals need to be, obviously responsible as well for how they are managing data within their own domain.
So one of we know that the topic of this subject is future-proofing technology, but what I think we've uncovered there is that it's the users of the technology that are just as important as well. We need to educate. We've talked about all of that one. So do we feel that HR and our wider colleagues in general have got a greater role to play in feeding into the security and privacy teams in helping us to define that future model and what a good model would look like?
Because I think everybody.
One if I can.
I'm sorry.
That's it.
Yes, but I wouldn't just put HR in there. I'd put everybody in there. So what we try to do is in pretty much every area, every meeting, we engage. We have policies, procedures, and ownership absolutely is critical to this. But we see it as a bit of a journey, really. People use technology everywhere, as we know, from their cars to their fridges, to their ovens, to the televisions, etc. So we need to put them on that journey to make all of this secure. And I think to do that, we take them on that journey to say, look, if you want to have this flexible new working environment, then we need to look at this from a completely different angle. Now, we can do this for a couple of ways, but actually we may want to look at some frameworks now. Because if you want to actually ensure that you've got this type of best practice embedded right the way through an organization, And you can start with cybersecurity essentials at the very lowest level. But maybe we should look at what we can do for many organizations. And maybe we need a new framework, maybe ISO 27001, or NIST. And maybe we could actually introduce something that works in this new environment, home working in the office and flexible working. I think maybe that needs to be readdressed, and we can come up with some standards. And that might be very, very useful. Certainly something that should be encouraged by the government.
Debbie, what are your thoughts on involving HR and all of our colleagues in helping us define not only the technology, but also the solutions that we develop going forward?
We might have lost Debbie there, I think, at the moment. But
yes, I think we have.
I'll carry on with that for the moment until he comes back. There you go, home working for you. That's almost on
exactly.
the challenge.
It always happens when you least want it to.
Do you know what, though? But it's a very good point. You've got to work within limitations. Again, we spend a lot of money on bandwidth. We spend a lot of money on connectivity, but ultimately you're down to your weakest link. And the fact that we've lost communication potentially with Debbie, that your weakest link could be a £2 router, or it could be a machine where people have not secured it and to that degree. So you need to look at where we can secure for the business and how we ensure that people adhere to those standards. And I think that should be embedded. And this is where HR are really important, because they can put this in your contract. If you want to work from home, you need to meet these minimum standards. And that needs to be audited. It needs to be checked. I think that's an engagement where you make the person has a choice. If they decide that we're home working, at least part of the time is for them, then they need to meet these standards. And I think that's critical for HR departments in the future.
Yeah, the way I see it is the journey to cloud will slowly involve a much greater range of end user devices, including IoT as well, but we won't go down the IoT route. And that will bring a significant change to the way that people use technology, with a sort of blur between work and home, because of the whole home working solution. This is my home setup, and I'm fortunate enough to have a monitor. I can just press a button and I take a separate feed, and I'm onto my work machine. So I'm reasonably lucky that way. I've still got the isolation there, but as this develops and as business strategies change, because the businesses will always want to minimize costs to increase profit. That's the overall reason why they exist at the end of the day. So I also see that that's going to become more and more where it's sort of like a shared ownership of devices as well. And then the ownership of the risks then comes back to security and privacy as to the controls that we can put in place using the software and the tools to manage that risk more acceptably to the business in a more fluid environment. Welcome back, Debbie.
Yeah, sorry, internet went down. You've got to let this work. Virtual environment. That's the downside. So hopefully I didn't miss too much. So sorry about that, guys.
That's absolutely fine. We were just talking about for your position on how you felt about engaging with HR and colleagues on changing that future way of working model and supporting that future proofing around technology.
Yeah. So I think you've got to engage everybody to sort of be on board with this journey, because it is a journey. And one of the things that I know we're not going to have time to discuss now is how we can preempt what technological changes are required to best accommodate the business generally. So for example, we look at erosion of cookies, for example, and how data can be captured in other ways, and how you can maybe better profile. I say better profile, but carefully and legitimately profile the data that you have. So all of these things I think are big issues for businesses to consider now, and lots of companies are using AI technology, etc. All of that has extreme benefits, but with it a lot of risks. And, you know, if people don't engage the security and the privacy teams at the right points in time, they're likely to fall over and get hit, as opposed to engaging us appropriately, so we can hopefully future-proof what they're trying to do and make sure we've done all the appropriate, you know, risk assessments, etc., and make sure the contracts are right as well. I see a lot of contracts at the moment that I sometimes think, oh, you know, is that the right thing to put in there? Because that's not going to be fit for purpose in 6 months or a year's time. So there we are. I don't know if that helps in terms of the sort of final sort of remarks.
Well, that's brilliant. That brings our session towards the end. John, Debbie, thank you so much for your input. It's for me personally, it's actually been brilliant to be able to speak to people from different sectors. You know, healthcare is a challenging sector, but reasonably, it's when it's frontline healthcare, we've got sites, and if you're ill, you go to a doctor. Yes, some of them come to you, but more often than not, you go to them. And second line services, you're always going to them. So it's good. It's been really, really valuable for me. Hopefully for all of our people who are watching, there's some value. And thank you very much for watching.